Good morning, S2. Today we're going to look at the first lesson of the cells topic. As a starter, let's look at some of the information you should know from last year's biology topic. You should know what the place an organism lives is called. That's the habitat. You should know what you would use to sample organisms that live on the ground. That's a pitfall trap. You should know what organ the skull protects. That's the brain. And you should know the type of blood vessels which carry blood away from the heart. That is the artery. So starting, we have two types of cell we're going to look at in this first lesson. We have the animal cell and we have the plant cell. Now, both of them contain the structures found in the animal cell. We'll talk about that in a second. But for just now, like you, all animal cells have these three parts in their cell. We have a nucleus. Now, the nucleus is the control center of the cell. It decides what the cell is able to do and what it can't do. It contains what are called the genes, which are on chromosomes, and that is made of the DNA, which makes you you. So the nucleus is the big control center of the cell. Next, we have the cytoplasm over here. The cytoplasm is like a wallpaper jelly kind of substance. It does a bunch of stuff. It's where most of the chemical reactions in the cell happen. It's full of lots of tiny little other structures that we don't talk about in the S2 course. And then we have the cell membrane. Now, the cell membrane is what keeps the inside and the outside of the cell separate. So the cell membrane is this thin line that runs around the outside of the animal cell. You'll see from this picture here that it's actually not a perfect circle or a perfect square or rectangle. It kind of goes in, then out, and it's quite flexible. Animal cells are quite flexible. If you were a tree, so not an animal cell, you wouldn't be able to bend your arms really easily. You wouldn't be able to walk. You wouldn't be able to hunt. You wouldn't be able to do lots of stuff. So animal cells, when you join lots of them together, they keep that flexibility and allow them to move. However, plant cells have some good things about them too. They, as I said before, still contain the nucleus, which was the control center of the cell. They still have the cytoplasm, which is this jelly-like substance that has all the chemical reactions, and they still have the cell membrane. So the features and structures of the animal cell are still there. But on top of those three, we have three more that we talk about at S2. Again, actually, in proper biology, there's a bunch of extra structures that plant cells have as well. The first one, the one that confuses a lot of people, is the cell wall. Now, we already had a cell membrane that kept the inside and the outside of the cell separate and which controlled what was able to enter and leave the cell. The cell wall is outside of that, you see thicker, and it has an extra function. It gives rigidity and structure to the cell. So, as I said, plant cells, they're not as flexible as animal cells are, but that's due to the cell wall. Because of the cell wall, you're able to stack lots and lots of plant cells on top of each other, and they can maintain the rigidity and kind of strength even when they get 100 feet tall. So a big 100-foot tall tree, if that was made of animal cells, it just would fall over. So it gives it a little bit of structure and rigidity, but it stops it being as flexible. Next, we have the chloroplast, which is this green circle here. You might have heard of in fact, you should have in S1, heard of the process of photosynthesis. So plants don't have mouths, they have to make their sugars themselves using the light from the sun and the gas called CO2 and water. So chloroplasts allow plants to do that process. They allow it to turn the light energy from the sun into chemical energy in the form of glucose. Only plant cells have these chloroplasts, so they're very special. And finally, we have the vacuole. If you think about it, different times of the day or the year, plants might take in more or less water. And what you don't want is your plant cell shriveling up when it's quite a dry time of the year, or ballooning out and bursting, which they don't tend to do, when it's quite a wet time of the year. So the vacuole acts as a little bit of a store. It means if water rushes into the cell, it can be trapped in the vacuole, so it doesn't affect the overall size and shape of the cell. Or if the cell starts to get dehydrated, the vacuole can give a little bit of water and a little bit of sugar. So these are just the answers that you should put into your notes. The nucleus is the control center of the cell. It controls the activity. The cell membrane controls what gets in and out of the cell. Cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance where chemical reactions take place. The vacuole stores cell sap. The chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis. And finally, the cell wall gives shape and structure to the cell. So, as said before, both plant and animal cells have nucleus, cell membrane, and cytoplasm, and it's only the plant cell that has the cell wall, the vacuole, and the chloroplast. Hopefully that makes sense. If there's anything you want to ask, please do get in touch.